Folks, it is one thing to read news from around the world, but it is something entirely different to bring on an expert and millionaire who has a decade of Wall Street experience to have a conversation that, frankly, I am not the expert to have. So I'm going to riff on this with the one and only Taylor from Life Goal Investments. Man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Sorry I was away last week, but we're back in the saddle and let's do this. I'm excited.
Yeah, something about you Wall Street guys. You always take August off. I mean, what? I mean, is it just like when you sign your docs, you just, hey, I'm taking August off? I don't know. It just seems like really weird.
I'm out of here. I'm headed to the beach.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah. Anyways, I want to talk about the China slowdown. Right. When my channel got initially started, we were talking about Evergrande, right? Their big property developer. Now there's another one blowing up. So we know about the property sector. We know about all the changes. A lot of Chinese wealth is stored in housing, right? Properties and housing. We now saw China have deflation, not inflation, not disinflation, deflation. We also saw exports drop 14%, imports drop 12%. There's, it's bad in China. And these are the numbers that are reported. So, for my seat, I'm like, well, if the numbers are reported this bad, what are the real numbers?
Right.
It's kind of thinking about. So I think China's struggles need to be watched, but I'm not really sure where to look, man. So you've been on Wall Street for 10 years and understand the back end of this. Where do we look? What's going on?
Yeah, what's funny is the market was really excited about China, obviously. They were coming out and going to emerge from COVID like we and the rest of the world did a couple years ago, and that was just going to proliferate their economy. And boy, it has not played out that way whatsoever. But what's funny to me is that the market here domestically really hasn't reacted. Right? You haven't seen any big downtick. You haven't seen earnings getting adjusted in a massive way. It just really hasn't been that much of a result for the second biggest economy in the world, really laying a big stinker of an egg here over the last 6 months. And it was one that was expected to go like this. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's moved in the opposite direction, but the market really hasn't reacted all that much. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out. But really, deflationary problems and pressures are a massive, massive problem for a country in general. And again, it was 1 month, but nonetheless, it was you literally saw prices come down. It sounds like the world's greatest problem. It absolutely is not. It is the sign of a stagnant economy. And what it does to people's psyche about their spending is it slows it down even further because people look at themselves and say, hey, I could go out and buy XYZ today, but why would I do that if I could do it tomorrow and it'll be cheaper? And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, spiraling economy further down. So again, this is one time where we saw a deflationary month. But that being said, this is absolutely something to watch because that is the biggest thing to blame for the 30 years of stagnation that the Japanese economy faced.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a lot of structural problems in the Chinese economy, right? The one child policy that was around for decades kind of built this up and you got to pay the price. But when I look at the numbers that came out in the last 2 weeks, the number that actually scared me, I don't know, scares the right word, but it caught my attention. It's like, whoa, shit, that's kind of weird, was the drop in exports.
Yeah.
Right. When you look at the drop in exports for China, I'm left with a couple of things. One, is their power as the manufacturing hub of the world ending and people are diversifying away? Probably. Um, are we, the US, onshoring more and more of our things because, why depend on someone who doesn't like us very much? Probably. Um, do people not trust, you know, probably. I mean, there's some big things. And if that number, 14%, we're not talking 1.4, we're talking 14%. If that number continues for 3 months, double digits, that's going to be a problem.
And what's interesting to me is when you think about the Chinese economy slowing, which is at least what this alludes to, right?
Sure.
When you
Yeah.
think about the Chinese economy slowing, they are, I believe at this point, the largest importer of oil. And you think, okay, so obviously oil prices have to tick down as a result of this. Oil's up about 22% in the last month. And you
Hmm.
go, wow, okay, this is kind of like a weird thing playing out right now because you have the largest oil importer showing some signs of economic weakness, which you think would draw down on demand for oil out of that country. But at the same time, you have oil prices going higher. So it's
Mhm.
kind of this push and pull that I wouldn't necessarily have expected to see play out at the same time, but maybe that shows, a broader demand elsewhere, or maybe that shows the market was offside saying demand was going to slow in oil prior. But it's another thing to keep your eye on.
Yeah, one of the things, because I've been thinking about this, knowing that you and I were going to talk today, is I've read a lot about China the last year or so, ever since, Evergrande and all of this stuff was going on. And I always think it's about the consumer, right? It certainly is in the US. I think it's true around the world. Um, the average Chinese consumer has a disproportionate amount of their wealth in property. I mean, far and away more than the United States. It's like you buy a house to live in and then you buy another one as your retirement account. That's kind of the mindset,
Correct.
right? And I think what that those people are looking at now, that given since Evergrande, and it's been 3 years of just constant negative press around real estate. I think it's really just the wealth effect. I think it's the Chinese consumer citizen going, I don't feel as wealthy as I did. And when that happens, you retreat on everything. I mean, could it be that simple, maybe?
Oh, it absolutely could. I mean, we're seeing the exact reverse of that play out here in the United States, right? Obviously, this year has been a
Yeah.
massive run in the stock market, and that is where the disproportionate wealth is gained here in the United States versus the real estate in China. And what are people doing? Well, spending is certainly not slowing down, not nearly
No.
to what the Fed wants it to with the interest rate increases. It's bucking that trend. So exactly what you're seeing here play out in the United States with the wealth effect due to the stock market returns, you're seeing the opposite play out in China. And again, consumer mentality is what drives prices over time. And again, if you start to see deflation and people go, okay, one begets another, like that becomes an issue. And again, we're not there yet. It's been 1 month of
Yeah.
deflationary pressure, but the wealth effect there certainly has had a negative effect on people. As you say, the disproportionate ownership of real estate there versus what we see here in the States, dramatically changes people's perception on things. And the real estate market is reeling there. There's no doubt about it. And then, not to totally derail this conversation, but there are totally outsized questions right now as to what's going on with their relationship between them and the big chip manufacturer, which
Yeah.
is Taiwan, right? And so,
I was going to go there as well, because when I look at what's going on in China, and obviously Xi Jinping, got his third term and all of that, but if things stay bad for the next 3 to 6 months and the economy is in this deflationary spiral, one of the chess moves that he'll do, or he may do, I should say, he may do, is he'll create a conflict
yep.
to rally the troops and distract from an economy that's really struggling. And again, there's other moves he could do, but that's when I look at that situation, I'm like, oh my God, I mean, as a chess move, it makes sense if the economy's that bad. And now let's be clear, the other thing he could do is helicopter money and just rain money from the skies. He could take tax incentives to buy stuff. I mean, there's all other things he could do. It's invading Taiwan is not the only thing, but one of the things we've learned through history is if you want to rally the troop and distract them, it's an
It's the
unfortunate
unfortunate truth.
reality. Yeah.
It's the unfortunate reality. And how does that impact our economy? We know right now that 90% of the advanced chips that are made and distributed throughout the world come from Taiwan. And so that is and 60% of all chips get made and produced in Taiwan and shipped out. So, if China disrupts that, you look at a company like Nvidia that's up 220% this year or something like that. That's an off the cuff number, but it's close. And you say, hey, most of their chips, they are heavily reliant upon that Taiwanese manufacturing chip component. If that starts to get disrupted, that can easily spill over to the AI craze that we've had in the United States, is largely dependent upon those microprocessors that are built out in Taiwan.
Well, let me be very clear for those folks that have been on my channel a while. You know that I have family in Taiwan, right? That this I've been to Taiwan half a dozen, 10 times. So this is not some theory of some guy that's never been there. I've got family there. We talk, I don't know, every other week, monthly, whatever it is. So this means something to me. Um, so that chess move is could be horrific. And let's be clear, I think it's pretty clear. Biden has said explicitly, which his people always go, he didn't say that, is he'll step up and protect Taiwan, right?
Yeah.
That's the his minions around him say, no, our policy hasn't changed. But the guy at the top's mouth has said it 2 or 3 times on record. And oh, by the way, he's called him a dictator and this and that and the other. So no love lost there. So um, it
And
could be
this
a chess
is
move that's bad.
so there is a couple of people that I listen to from a geopolitical standpoint that are far more in depth than I am in this type of kind of policy and arena, and they're aligning what happened between Russia and the Ukraine very similarly, 6 months in advance of what Russia actually made the invasion into Ukraine to what's going on between China and Taiwan right now. And I won't do it any justice, so I won't go down what they're actually aligning and drawing parallels to. But nonetheless, they're saying that. And granted, that's just the most recent one, and it did go through, and there are others that happened similarly when they didn't invade, etc. But nonetheless, they're saying the tea leaves are showing that this is not, highly improbable or
Yeah,
improbable. It
the
actually
odds
could
aren't
land.
zero.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. This is, I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but this is a big concern. Again, there are lots of other options I hope he chooses, but we have seen dictators who feel like they're cornered and the populace is unhappy.
Right. And you look at
Mutates.
China growth going from high single digits to extremely low single digits in not too long of a span, in a decade or so. We weren't looking, 15 years ago, you were looking at China in double digits economic growth. And it was something that they just thought would continue to sustain moving forward. And again, it's fallen off a cliff. And the COVID reentry into the market, I don't mean COVID re-entered their market, the COVID allowing them to open up their doors and start to explore again hasn't had the effect that people had wanted to have.
Yeah. Well, we're just going to end it on that. I am concerned that the economy in China is slowing down. I hope it's a 1 month blip and that's not where they are. Or I hope they do the helicopter money. The loss of life that would come from an invasion of that size would be unbearable.
Totally
So
agree.
to end on that, Taylor, where can people find you? You were even doing videos on your vacation, which you were flexing and showing your tan. So we all appreciate that.
Looking like a clown. I'm like, I only brought a few clothes. Like, I guess I'm wearing this, whatever. Here we go. Yeah, no, find us at Life Goal Investments on both Instagram and on TikTok. I appreciate you, Michael.
Thank you, buddy.